Welcome back to The Healing Habit, where we talk about the importance of healing and how to make it a part of your everyday life. I'm your host, Cassie Sharp.
And I'm Renatha Lollis.
Renatha, why don't you tell us a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today?
Well, today we're going to be talking about some of the consequences and the cost of unforgiveness. Because when we think about healing and implementing healing as an everyday practice and choosing to make it a habit, there are a few sneaky things that can derail our healing process. And unforgiveness is one of those things. So today we're going to talk about some of the consequences, some of the cost of unforgiveness, and some of that hidden cost that we may not necessarily be aware of.
Wow. Okay. So lot to unpack here. Let's just talk about an overview of what some of these costs might be.
Okay. So when we think about unforgiveness, it tends to lend itself as a right. Because we've been wronged. If I'm going through the process of needing to forgive, if I'm holding on to unforgiveness, it feels like my right to maintain this level of frustration or anger. And it is, because we each have a right to feel what we feel.
Right.
But at what cost? So when we think about unforgiveness and we think about it in terms of our healing journey, unforgiveness itself can serve as a roadblock on that journey. It literally impedes our progress. And as I am a person or anyone is moving forward on a healing journey, what unforgiveness does is it stops you and plants a flag right in one spot. You're unable to move past it. And this is whether or not you need to forgive yourself, forgive another person who injured you, forgive an organization, a society, a construct. Wherever you are, if there is an injury that you believe that has been done against you, if you're going to heal, you must forgive to move past that injury. But oftentimes we have beliefs about unforgiveness that can stop us from being able to move forward.
Yeah, when you say that, I think about like sports therapy, because that's something that I'm always here talking about all the different therapies, apparently. But I was a kinesiology major for a short period of time. I didn't, go through the whole thing, but I learned a lot. And one of the things was rehabilitation. And part of that process is coming to terms with the fact that you may have had to take a long break from something that you were very passionate about. That break might have cost you a scholarship, so kind of coming to terms with that, processing it. So how does that actually play into your ability to physically heal? Is that, would you say that we're maybe in a sense continuing to partner with that injury just from the unforgiveness angle?
I love that, because that's exactly what we're doing. So partner or agreeing with the injury keeps you stuck, because we cannot move past what we agree with. The brain is fascinating. And as a brain health coach, one of the things that I work with clients to do is helping them achieve their brain health goals. And oftentimes people have a goal of wanting to have more mental clarity, or wanting to have a greater memory, or wanting to get over anxiety or depression. Whatever their issue is, when we understand that the brain can only move past what it agrees with. So for instance, if your brain told you that you could not sit down, there'd be no way for your body to carry out that action, because your brain agrees with the belief that this isn't possible. If my brain continues to partner with the injury, the thing that hurt me, we end up ruminating on this one instance that should have had a singular impact. But because of our rumination, we re-injure ourselves over and over and over again. And it's that old saying, death by 1,000 cuts, where we're experiencing that same pain over and over. And what we falsely tell ourselves is that by re-injuring ourselves, or by re-engaging with, or agreeing with, or partnering with that belief.
Ourselves.
Exactly.
Wow.
So we move into this place of self-protection. Well, all the while, instead of protecting ourselves, we really have sunk down into quicksand and we can't move forward, because we are partnering with the belief system that keeps us stuck.
Wow. I just need a second to process all of that. That is incredible. So when we talk about, let's say, people who have experienced a dislocation, like I know, like that's a physical injury. But what I've heard from that is once you've dislocated it once, then it's easier to re-injure over and over again. Is there something mental related to that, or is that purely a physical concept?
So that's an interesting idea. So thinking about injury in terms of now there's awareness that there is an issue in a particular area. So let's do in the idea of a relationship. So if you're involved in a romantic relationship and you experience betrayal from your partner, that is an injury that you experience mentally and emotionally. So now that injury makes it possible for you to be re-injured, okay? Because now I have experience of what betrayal feels like. And if I don't go through the process of healing from that betrayal, then I am always looking for the next injury in that area.
Yeah.
I am constantly partnering with that idea, which makes me more susceptible to interpret behaviors as betrayal that may not necessarily be betrayal. So it isn't so much that it creates an opportunity for the re-injury, but it does create a willingness to see and characterize something as the injury because of the not having been able to release or be healed from it. So in that process of being able to understand that I've been hurt in a specific way, healing from that hurt makes it less likely for me to fall into that hurt again because now I'm aware. So if I understand, using that betrayal as an example, that I've been betrayed, when I go through the process of being healed from that betrayal, of forgiving that person, of doing the mental and emotional work, now I am free to be able to move into relationship without protecting against betrayal at every turn.
Right.
Now I'm able to rebuild trust in a relationship because I was injured in that area and I was healed in that area. Much like if someone has a physical break that once it heals, sometimes it can heal even stronger than when it was. So we can become more stronger and more resilient when we go through the healing process.
Wow. Okay. So let's talk about relational damage, because I know that that's a thing that many of us do struggle with.
Yeah.
When we're considering relational trauma, and then we think about cycles from, let's say, let's talk about parental trauma. Then that goes into generational issues where, well, my mother's was an alcoholic and she did this. And so I'm now an alcoholic and stuff that you partner with, you believe about yourself. How do you stop that? How do you break that cycle?
Well, the interesting thing about cycles or patterns is that in most cases, we don't know that we're in them. There has to be a pattern disruptor that enters into the equation to make us aware of the fact that a pattern exists. So think about this in terms of if you're driving on a dirt road, and I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but here in Texas, dirt roads are common. And when you get on that dirt road, it's really, really unsteady. Then all of a sudden, your tires move into a rut. And once your tires get into that rut, it's easier to drive on that dirt road. Now, when we think about that in terms of our neural pathways or our mental thought processes, we can get into patterns of behavior that are normal to us. They feel absolutely comfortable. They are well-worn ruts in our thinking. And those patterns of behavior can absolutely be given to us generationally from our parents, from our family of origin, from our culture, from society. And when we operate in these patterns, they are, again, normal to us. Not unless there's a pattern disruptor that comes into our lives to let us know that we're in a pattern, are we even aware? So a pattern disruptor can be anything. It can be a relationship, someone who looks at your life with a different set of eyes. So that could be a friendship, a romantic relationship. It could be a pain point, something that happens that causes you to experience pain. Or it could be education. You can learn something that helps you understand that this way of believing or being and doing, while normative to me, is actually unhelpful. An analogy that I use with my clients is how we brush our teeth. Most of us brush our teeth the way our moms taught us to brush our teeth, or our parents taught us to brush our teeth. We have the same scenario that we learned when we were 2 years old, the first time we held a toothbrush. And that has changed probably very little from how we first started brushing our teeth. Most people don't go out and do polls and talk to all of their friends and go to random strangers and say, hey, how do you brush your teeth? But what happens is if you have a pain point and you start to have a toothache and you go to the doctor then can ask you the question, how do you brush your teeth? And you say, well, I only brush the outside. And the doctor is, well, that's why you have lots of cavities. There's another way, a better way for you to brush your teeth.
Right.
Without that pain point of the toothache, you would have never sought additional education to be able to know that there's something that needs to happen.
Right.
So many of us, when we're on a healing journey, we have a cycle on how we deal with conflict or how we deal with anger or how we deal with forgiveness. We have a cycle or a pattern that we're a part of. And this podcast actually can serve as a pattern disruptor. This education gives everyone the opportunity to look at the cycles or patterns in their life and determine whether or not they're operating in a way that's going to be healthy and beneficial to create the healing that they desire for their life.
Yeah. Wow, that is so powerful. And I think too, it relates to romantic relationships or friendship relationships when we bring up the word trigger. Because I know that in our world today, that's something that's almost becoming normalized. Can we talk about not just the word trigger, but also what is the world kind of feeding us? Society's kind of feeding us this, it's okay to stay in that hurt place?
Yeah, such a good question.
Yeah.
Because triggered is now a part of our, vernacular. We use that word on a regular. It is part of our vocabulary. We use the word being triggered all of the time. I like to explain the triggering process from a concept I think most of us will get. If we think about our brain as a Windows home screen, on that home screen, we're going to see all of these various files. Well, all of the files that are on that home screen are a shortcut to a deeper file address. So if I wanted to access that file from the original way that it was first created, I'd have to go to File, I have to go to Menu, to Start, I have to locate the program, then I have to double click on the program, open the program, then I have to click Open to File, find the file, click the subfolder, and then I'd be able to open the file.
Right.
And so when I create a shortcut, it gives me quick access to a file. So when we think about our brain, because the brain loves order and the brain loves speed, it wants to categorize things in the most efficient way possible to retrieve information. So now, here's the scenario. Imagine you're in line at a grocery store and there is a man who's in front of you who is checking out with the cashier. And this man is being awful to the cashier. He is rude, he's obnoxious, he is, calling, using foul language, and just being an absolute jerk to this poor cashier. And as you're looking at this guy and you're watching it all play out, you notice that he's wearing a green shirt, and you're like, oh, this guy is terrible. So in your brain, there is a file that has just been created, and in that file, now, it is man wearing green shirt equals jerk. So fast forward, 6 months later, you're standing in line at the bank. There's a guy who comes in and he's wearing a green shirt, and immediately you dislike him because your brain went man, green shirt, jerk. Shortcut.
And you are in that moment, you're like, I have this discomfort, this unease, and sometimes you don't even know why.
You don't even know why.
Yeah.
Because that initial issue that happened in the grocery store, it didn't register as something that needed to stay in your short-term memory.
Exactly.
It's moved to the long-term memory. It's in a file, and you're not even aware. Now, this is a very, very, mild, benign example. Now, imagine using that example that we just used of betrayal in the relationship. So now you're in a new relationship. You've got betrayal that is unhealed. And in that process, as you're walking through this new relationship, when you see behaviors that remind you or trigger you from the old relationship, now that file is double clicked and you make all of these suppositions. They did this, they did this, they did this. They must be about to betray me.
Wow.
But what happens is when we go through the healing process, it allows that file, that neural pathway that has been created to now be purged, to have new information added to it so that healing now lives in that file.
Yeah.
And when you double click on it, it isn't the pain of betrayal, but it's also the triumph of healing.
Right. And I love all that you're saying. So let's go back to the man in the green shirt analogy.
Yeah.
He's being really rude, and in your head you have this connection that men in green shirt equals rude. I don't like them, but you don't know why.
Yeah.
Right? So how do you walk through a healing process for something that you don't even know is affecting you?
Oh, that's such a great question. So when you think about this, you see the man, so we've got the initial issue, and then when we move forward in time, you're having this visceral reaction to a man in a green shirt and you don't understand why.
Yeah.
So when we are able to look at our behavior and then determine that there is no cause that we are aware of, right? Mm-hmm. So one option is to look at the guy in the green shirt who you've never met, you don't know anything about him, and begin to treat him as if he is rude. But another reaction is to say, I don't know this guy. He may be nice. I choose to no longer allow my programming to impact me. Because we have the ability to override a pattern. So knowledge becomes the pattern disruptor. I look at this and I say, there's no reason for me to have this reaction to him. I choose to do something differently.
When you said we have the ability to override our brain's programming, that is so powerful, because I think a lot of us feel stuck. I think a lot of us are like, well, that's the way that we were raised. Some of us maybe feel like justified in the frustration or in the hurt, so much so that we're just content being in that place. If you are in that place where you've been hurt and you recognize that you've been hurt, but you're also like, I haven't been nice to people in this way. Yeah. And I recognize that I'm hurting a lot of people. I'm losing a lot of friends. I'm damaging relationships. I'm constantly getting into cycles of unhealthy or toxic relationships. At a certain point, you hit this wall where you're like, the insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Yeah. So in that sense, being able to agree with the fact that you can override it. Yes. Or maybe disagree with the programming in your brain.
Well, so that's an interesting concept, because when we step into these cycles and we have these ways of being that have been passed down to us, or we have been influenced by, again, culture, family of origin, society, whatever the influence is, when we come to terms with the fact that we do not have to remain a victim to our programming, we step into the real journey to healing, because that's where we start. Healing, we have to first decide that we want to be whole.
Yes.
And when we accept that my programming is problematic, that it is not helping me live the life that I desire, that I am not connecting with or living a life that meets my expectations, the first place we always have to look is in the mirror. We have to look within. And when we understand that our behavior, that's the only thing that we can control, we have the ability to react or to respond. Right. And as we think about this, and so there's a distinction between the two. So reacting is going to be instinctive. It is going to be reflex. So if I were to throw something at you, it would be a reflex for you to throw your hands up to protect your face. That is outside of, it moves past your cognitive ability. It is simply your body responding to external stimuli. But a response requires information and it requires intellect. So we have the ability to step out of a reaction and move into a response. And when we make the choice to not allow our triggers to control us, then we're moving from reacting to responding. Because my triggers, I don't have any initial control over being triggered. Because my brain experiences something, it double clicks on the file, and there you go. But my triggers are information, and this is very important. Emotions are information. They are not decision-making tools. I'm going to say that again. Emotions are information. They are not decision-making tools. Your emotions should make you curious. So if we go back to the green shirt scenario, if I see this guy and immediately I have an emotional response to him, my first question should be, why do I feel that way? Is that grounded in truth? Is that grounded in reality? Like, I don't even know why I don't like guys in green shirts. I don't accept that as true. So I can now, rather than react, I can choose to respond.
I mean, there's a lot of incredible stuff, and I know we're going to get into the depth of how to later on, but I want to talk a little bit more about the consequences if we choose not to do this.
Yeah.
Because like I was mentioning earlier, the world is pushing this, hey, it's okay. You deserve to be hurt. That hurt you. You should be okay in the cry room, in the, just process your feelings, take as long as you need. And it's almost all this misinformation that encourages us to stay in bondage to the trauma. In this lie that's being sold that staying in bondage to really process it is going to heal it. So let's just crack that wide open.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what is physically happening inside of our bodies that is causing harm to us when we hold on to that hurt.
Yes, that's such a great question. And we do live in a culture that is selling the processing of trauma as a holding place, that they are inviting you to remain here. And I want to say this is very important. We have a right to feel our feelings. It is important for us to feel what is happening and to acknowledge the emotional experience that we're having. The challenge is when our feelings become the most important thing. Because we have feelings, but we still have a life that we have to live. And as I mentioned earlier, our feelings are not good decision-making tools. I have never personally ever made a good emotional decision.
Yeah.
Most of the time when I make a decision based on my emotions, once those emotions have calmed down, I regret the decision that I made.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But when we're taught that our emotions and our feelings are the most important thing, what we don't recognize is that we're actually falling into a trap. And we're falling into a trap of our own making. And that's not our intention. That's not what we want to do. Our goal is to be healthy and emotionally intelligent and live full lives. And acknowledging our emotions is part of that, but not staying trapped in our emotions and processing through them is extremely valuable. So let's talk about some of the consequences of not doing this. When we think about this in terms of healing and then add with that the forgiveness and unforgiveness, some of the consequences have really, really far-reaching impact. For instance, consequences of unforgiveness or stress. So, and increased cortisol levels. Just to explain in a little bit more detail, we have two systems in our nervous system. We have our sympathetic nervous system and our parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is ignited and fuels our fight or flight response. So if we had to outrun a tiger because we are frightened, we're going to get a boost of cortisol and adrenaline. It's going to give us a boost of energy, and we're going to be able to run for our lives or turn around and fight the tiger. I'm going to go with run instead of fight.
Oh, yeah.
Now, so with this sympathetic nervous system is really, really important. But then we have the parasympathetic nervous system. And so this is going to be what calms us, what regulates our breathing, what helps us to stay clear, calm, and relaxed. But when we are in an unhealed state, our sympathetic nervous system and our fight or flight response is ignited. This leads to increased cortisol levels, which is the stress hormones. So our stress levels are going to go through the roof. It's going to cause your heart rate to increase. Yeah. It is going to lead to high blood pressure. It can lead to issues with sleep. issues with your actual digestive system. It can create all kind of problems from a physiological standpoint, increases in anxiety or depression, even increases in your cholesterol. There have even been some studies that have linked unforgiveness with cancer. And when you think of the health, the impact to your physical health, it starts to make you wonder if staying in that emotional unhealed place is even worth it. Because as I am dealing with these things that are happening in my body, these emotions, it is having a physiological impact. Now, that's just the physical piece. When we're talking about the relational piece, when I am in this flight or fight response and I've got this, my sympathetic nervous system is online, now how I relate to other people is going to be impacted. How am I able to be in a healthy, loving relationship that is healing and growing if I am in a constant fight or flight response? How am I going to be able to grow and be a present friend or partner or parent or employee for that matter? Every part of our lives are going to be impacted by this heightened sympathetic nervous system. So when we make the decision to forgive and we step into a healing journey, we have the ability to now upend all of the damage that unforgiveness and an unhealed life is creating and move towards implementing something that can change everything.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. And that is so crazy to think that there are physical components, there's emotional components, there's financial components. We could talk about how that could create maybe a cycle of your life that is affected in even a financial way. That could you talk about that a little bit too?
Well, so understanding that healing impacts every area.
Yes.
We tend to think of ourselves as siloed, as more disintegrated. But when we consider that all parts of us function in concert, so if I'm having problems physically, it is absolutely going to impact me mentally and emotionally. And it's going to impact me relationally or financially because my decision-making ability is going to be impaired.
Yes.
So all of the areas that relate to a healthy, functioning life can be impacted by a person who is not on a healing journey or who hasn't prioritized healing as something that is important, that they need to integrate in every area.
So would you say that holding on to a hurt would be a direct impactor to the financial health, or would it be that can lead to depression, which can lead to, staying inside, which could lead to not pursuing a career, which could, is it more of a long drawn out process or a cycle, almost like an addiction, or would it be a direct impact? And is that how it would be on every area of healing, or would it just be that one?
Well, because all people are different, there really is no one size fit all. Where one person could have an issue happen and it could actually spur them in their unhealed place to work harder and drive. So they could have great financial success, but have carnage in their relationships and destruction in those areas. So there is no guarantee that one area will be impacted over another because we're all different. And the path towards healing and the path towards the damage is all going to be dependent on the individual and their different factors. So there is no one size fits all. There is no one prescription. Every person, based on their life and the factors that comprise their life, is going to arrive at different places.
Okay. And because I'm thinking about when you said that there have been studies that have linked unforgiveness with cancer. And I've been thinking about how I know that the body repairs itself when it sleeps, right? That's a known fact. So when we think about the body repairing it when itself when it sleeps, the question I would ask is, why is that? And I would venture to say that it has something to do with the, what's the calming?
The parasympathetic nervous system?
Yes. Yeah. Would it be something about that?
So understanding that sleep is like the reset button.
Yes.
So it is an opportunity for your brain to be offline so that your body can do what it was created to do. Now, here's the interesting thing. When we live in unforgiveness, sleep is one of the areas that is actually disrupted. When we are in an unhealed state, your sleep can absolutely be impacted, which can definitely impact your body's ability to repair itself.
Can you say that one more time?
Yes. When you're in an unhealed state and you're living in unforgiveness, your sleep absolutely can be impacted, which then impacts the body's ability to do what it was created to do, and that's heal itself.
Wow.
Yeah.
So tying everything back in, I guess my last question to you would be, what do we do with all this information? Now that we know what the consequences of unforgiveness could be, how do we take that next step?
Well, the next step simply is to choose to forgive. Is to make the decision to allow this podcast to be the cycle disruptor, the pattern disruptor, so that you can take this information and start the process of forgiving. It's important to remember that sometimes if you're dealing with an issue that is so heightened emotionally that you may not know how to move through it or where to begin. But you don't have to do this alone. Mm-hmm. There are competent mental health professionals, whether it is a therapist, a licensed professional counselor, a coach, who can help you process through these different things and help you on your journey to healing. So this is not something that you need to do on your own. There are people who can help you do exactly this.
Yes, absolutely. And for anybody who's watching that is interested in taking that next step in the healing journey, we have included some of those resources down in the notes section underneath this episode. If you guys would like to click on those and just kind of weave through some of those options, we would just love for you guys to start and take that next step on that journey. So I think that's all we have for you guys today. Again, my name is Cassie.
And I'm Renatha.
We are just so overjoyed that you guys have been with us today. And we will see you guys on the next episode where we talk about
the benefits of forgiveness.
The benefits of forgiveness. We'll see you guys next time.